Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome back to my channel. If you have been walking this path for a while with me, you know we don't do surface level here. We go deep, and I mean, we go really, really deep into the soul, into the wound, and into the truth. And today's teaching is one of the most raw, powerful, and misunderstood parts of our beloved divine masculine's awakening. So, this discourse is for those of you who are asking, why did he disappear the moment we got closer? Why does he shut down every time I rise in my truth? Why does he act like love is a threat? So, today I'm taking you right into that sacred moment. The moment our beloved divine masculine's ego breaks. And I'm going to show you what looks like rejection, all right? And what looks like rejection is actually resurrection, What looks like collapse is actually his awakening. So what is the divine masculine ego really? So we need to understand first as divine feminines, our divine masculine, when our divine masculines go through this, that the divine masculine ego is not just arrogance or pride. It's like structure, it's scaffolding, it's survival. From childhood, most men are taught to associate control with identity. Men learn crying is weakness, asking for help is failure, needing connection is, expressing emotion is dangerous. So, what happens? Divine masculines build a shell, a fortress, a perfectly constructed false identity that says, see, that's why you would always notice how our divine masculines, they seem to be all put together, and especially it's like we know there's so much our DM wants to speak, but yet what he likes to portray is that he's fine, he's strong, and he doesn't need anyone, But beneath that shell is a boy who was never allowed to be held, a boy who was never shown that softness could be safe, a boy whose heart was shut down before it ever got the chance to speak. And this is the architecture of the masculine ego. It's not vanity, it's protection. It's not confidence, it's more of compensation, right? And this ego must break, not because our divine masculine is doing something wrong, but because our love cannot fully reach him through the walls. So that's when we, as the divine feminine, we become a mirror of chaos and truth. So what happens when we enter the picture as divine feminines? We don't even have to do anything. You see, that's the thing. Because we're programmed to think that we have to do something. So our presence alone disrupts the entire structure because we are not predictable. We don't operate on logic. We operate on soul. We operate in truth, love, chaos, creativity, surrender, and trust. And that's the reason why, as divine feminines, we don't need our divine masculine. We feel our divine masculine. We don't ask for divine masculine to perform. We see through him. And this terrifies our divine masculine's ego, because for the first time, the fortress that I was talking about earlier starts to shake. He realizes he cannot manage this connection. He is not able to perform his way through this, and he can't think his way out of this. And this is when he panics. And because our presence activates everything his ego worked so hard to suppress: emotion, vulnerability, surrender, need, and truth, you see. That's when the cracks begin. But that's not yet the breaking point, you see. So I want to talk about the energetic mechanics of a snap point. Let's talk about what that snap point actually means. So this is the moment our divine masculine's ego structure meets something it cannot override and collapses. So there are 3 layers to this. Number 1, cognitive dissonance. All right, our divine masculine starts to notice that who he pretends to be no longer aligns with how he feels inside. He knows he loves us, his divine feminine. He knows he feels us, but the mask he's been wearing doesn't know how to love. Number 2, energetic misalignment. The frequency of our feel starts rising and his old identity can't keep up. This is when he starts pulling away, avoiding us, blaming us, or even getting angry. It's really not personal per se. It's actually pressure. It's like a pressure cooker bursting within, right? And number 3, the external mirror cracks. So this is when you will notice that his life on the external is affected greatly. A job breaking down, him feeling frustrated, for example, that his workplace is not accommodating to his freedom, or he's stretching it too far, because 3D organizations are going to be 3D organizations. He can't expect all multinational organizations to operate in his way unless he starts his own company, right? So things like that would start to break down. For category 1, divine masculines, all the karmic connections will start to dissolve. A health crisis could occur, or someone in his family could be ill, or a moment of deep shame hits. Something in our divine masculine's life physically reflects that illusion is no longer working. Then the snap happens. One moment, one trigger, one event, and the whole system collapses. He can no longer pretend, he can no longer suppress, he can no longer control. And this is the moment of ego death. So how does it look like in the 3D world? All right. So what does this actually look like in the real life, right? So as divine feminines, we might notice sudden silence after a deep moment of intimacy, a breakdown in his career or finances, a complete personality shift, detachment, depression, anxiety, or shutting down, or unexplainable anger or erratic behavior. But behind the scenes, here's what's actually happening. He's experiencing inner collapse, divine masculine, as what do divine masculines do when they experience inner collapse? His false masculine template starts to shatter, his soul is waking up, and his ego doesn't know how to survive it. And remember, this is when our beloved divine masculines love to blame it all on us. The lashing out, the running, not because we have harmed him, but because our presence showed him what was false, and that can feel like death to the part of him that's only ever known control. So remember, all right, remember this very, very, very clearly. Masculine awakening happens through collapse, not pursuit. This is one of the hardest truths to accept. The divine masculine does not awaken through love and light. He awakens through loss of control. He awakens through the moment he realizes his ego isn't working anymore. And as divine feminines, we awaken through devotion. And our beloved divine masculines awaken through dismantling. Can you see the contrast there? This is why pursuing our divine masculine never works. Turning up, where he will be, or messaging him, or trying to set up a meeting or anything, it would never work. You have to see it this way, you're like offering healing to the very part of him that has to die. So that's why when we chase, we are not loving our divine masculine, we are loving his mask. And our job is not to rescue him. Our job is not to anchor the field while he breaks through his illusion. You know what I mean by that, right? So remember, our divine masculine's ego isn't breaking because of us. It's breaking because of truth. So that's why many of us would feel guilt, and we think maybe I triggered him too much. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Maybe I should have been more patient. But please hear this. Our divine masculine's ego is not breaking because of us. It's breaking because the time has come for him to meet himself, to face himself. And we didn't cause the collapse. We catalyzed the truth. And that truth is our divine masculine cannot be our counterpart and wear the mask. He cannot merge into divine union while living from performance. I keep talking about us divine feminines performing. This is our divine masculines performing. He cannot fully love us until he meets the parts of himself he's never dared to face. So that's when our role comes in, the sacred role of us divine feminines during his collapse. So what do we do when we see our divine masculine break? Even though we'll be so tempted to step in and fix, no, we do not step in to fix. We do not try to explain the connection again. We do not try to prove our worth. Instead, we anchor, we stabilize, we rise. And this is the moment our sacred feminine energy must hold the field of coherence. Our divine masculine needs to feel the difference between the collapsing world and the truth of our vibration. Our divine masculine needs to see that union doesn't come from clinging. It comes from embodiment. Our divine masculine needs to know that we love him enough to let him awaken in his own time. Because if we try to save him, we interrupt his resurrection. And if we collapse too, we mirror our divine masculine's trauma and not his truth. That's why after the collapse, what happens in his heart is a big question. You guys are probably waiting for this part, right? After the step point, something new begins. A quiet phase, a phase of internal recalibration. Our divine masculine suddenly aware everything he avoided, everything he suppressed, everything he projected on us. He may not come forward yet, but his inner world has changed. And this is the moment he begins observing us differently. He starts watching us without needing to control us. He starts feeling our love without needing to fix it. He remembers the moments that broke his heart open. And often this is when our beloved divine masculine feels the weight of what he did, the accountability. Not in guilt, but in recognition. He starts to realize, as divine feminines, we were never the trigger, we were the teacher. We were never the problem, we were the portal. And we were never asking too much. We were inviting him to the truth. So why does this collapse? Why is this collapse the gateway to union? Union does not come before our divine masculine's collapse. Union is born through it. Something that it's not talked about much, but that's the truth. Because only when the mask dies can the soul truly speak. Only when control is gone can trust be built. Only when our divine masculine meets himself in the ashes can he truly meet us. And this is why our field matters. Because while he's burning, our frequency is the memory of home. We are the soul stabilizer, the truth keeper. The frequency you will return to once his identity dissolves. So that's why if you are watching your divine masculine pull away right now, if he just disappeared, if he's gone cold, if he's projecting or collapsing or running, don't assume it's over. Assuming this is just the beginning. Because when the ego breaks, our soul can breathe, and when control shatters, union begins. And when he finally meets himself in the ruins, he will remember you will remember the divine feminine us, where we stood still even during the storm. The women who held the field without chasing, the women who didn't collapse with him, but instead become the lighthouse. That's what we are meant to do, to become the lighthouse. As I'm going to delve a little deeper into this discourse, I just want to say that it's important to deeply understand the inner architecture of the masculine ego. That's why I've built it as part 1. And as we proceed on to part 2, in today's continuation, we're going into what happens after the collapse, because as many of you already know, the ego breaking is just the beginning. All right, the journey after collapse is what really defines our divine masculine's awakening and how divine union becomes possible. So once our divine masculine's ego breaks, there's an immediate energetic vacuum. All right. He has lost the version of himself he depended on, the false self that controlled, protected, postured. This creates what we call the void phase. And this is not a peaceful void, it's psychological, emotional, and an energetic free fall, And during this time, our divine masculine may feel completely numb and emotionally disoriented, confused about this is the identity crisis period. In other words, he'll be confused about what he or what he wants, who he is or what he wants, ashamed of how he had treated us, but unable to reach out. That's like truly limbo kind of phase. Simultaneously, he will also be angry at us and deeply attached to us, exhausted from pretending and unable to find stability. And here's what's actually happening. His half of the soul is rebooting. Everything that used to define him is offline, and until the new frequency kicks in, he will feel like he's floating in identity limbo. And this is not regression, guys. This is recalibration. So, the second phase, that's the grief, guilt, and the realization of love. So next comes the grief wave. He starts to feel the weight of what he has lost, not just you, but himself. The version of himself that was fake, the authentic self he abandoned, the love he sabotaged. And here's the painful truth. He doesn't just miss us. He begins to respect us. And you see, that's the turning point, the respect. Because back in the day, with all the chasing that as divine feminines we might have done, the respect might have gone down. So this is when the pedestal finally crumbles. He no longer sees you as the one who chased. He sees you as the one who knew. And often this is when the guilt sets in. He starts to realize the impact of his actions, not from a victim narrative, but from the sober truth that he hurt. That literally he will be like, he hurt someone who only ever offered love, and this is the moment he starts to see clearly, not as trigger, not as temptation, not as the fantasy, but as the sacred mirror he was ready to face. So then your question may be, then why is he not reaching out yet? Now I know what you're thinking, right? If he finally sees me clearly, why doesn't he come forward? So this part is hard to hear, but important. Our divine masculine doesn't come forward because he still doesn't feel worthy. So when the ego breaks, it doesn't immediately get replaced with confidence. It gets replaced with rawness, vulnerability, emotional nakedness, and often shame. Our divine masculine doesn't want to be seen in that state, and on some level he assumes we have moved on. And the more powerful we become, the more unreachable we seem to his unhealed masculine. So he watches from a distance. He really turns towards external ways of trying to see you, right? And he tunes into our energy field. He dreams of us, he thinks of us daily, but he's still integrating. So our role during his silent integration is not to reach out, not to prove that we still love him, not to soften our boundaries to make him feel better. Our job is embodiment. Because the more we embody the truth, our clarity, our self-love, our divine receptivity, the more our field teaches our divine masculine what the new energetic paradigm is. We are not the safe option anymore. We are the truth. And his soul is being pulled towards the truth, even if his personality still resists it. So every time you choose coherence instead of collapse, you show him what divine feminine mastery looks like, and whether he consciously understands it or not, he's learning through your field. So the next phase, or the final phase, all right, the masculine rebuild. Once the shame wave begins to dissipate, the divine masculine begins to rebuild. But here's the difference, he's no longer rebuilding a false self, he's reconstructing a soul-aligned identity. This may take months, this may even take years, depending on his resistance and karmic entanglements. Start making new choices, leaving toxic environments, ending shallow relationship, friendships, toxic friendships, feeling called to purpose or service, healing family dynamics, becoming emotionally honest with himself. And during this phase, you will start to feel the softening. He may still be silenced, but you will feel the field become less distorted, and our divine masculine's presence will feel less defensive, and the intensity will shift to reverence, because the man we loved is now remembering the soul he always was. So, signs that his ego is broken and his soul is rising. So, as divine feminines, this is a question we would ask. How do I know his ego is broken? So, here are some of the signs you will feel even if you haven't spoken to your divine masculine. His energy feels transparent. You can feel his emotions more clearly. Dreams become mutual, more, with synchronicities, Your higher selves, you can feel your higher selves reconnecting. You'll feel less obsessive. The push-pull dynamic will be more relaxed. You'll start receiving signs of preparation. Visions flash forwards, future timelines. Feel clarity. So our divine masculine may be physically distant, but our bond will feel much more clearer. No more ego hooks, no more gaslighting, no more confusion. You'll feel a quiet reverence in the field, and that's our sign that his soul is finally standing in the door of return. So how does the divine masculine return after ego death? Here's something no one talks about. When a divine masculine returns after ego death, he doesn't return like the man you knew. He will return slower, softer, more grounded, emotionally raw, but deeply, 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 deeply respectful. He might not have the right words, but you'll feel the sincerity, you'll feel the reverence, you'll feel that he knows now. He'll likely test the waters first, a message, a question, a request for help. But what he's really asking is it safe to bring my heart here now? And only our energy can answer that. So not all divine masculines return the same way. So I want you to remember that clearly, because now I want to share something very, very important. All right. Not every divine masculine returns with fireworks and vows. Some return with friendship, some return with tears, some with silence that says everything, some only return after a karmic chapter closes. So our job is not to control our divine masculine's return. Our job is to discern if it's the soul or the mask again. And if the mask returns, we hold our boundary with love. If the soul returns, we hold our heart with grace. Either way, we are not waiting, we are anchoring, we are not chasing, we are inviting. We are not lost in the field, because we become the field, right? So I want to leave you with this. Our divine masculine's collapse is not our failure. It's the sacred prerequisite for true union. It's the death of false love, the death of performance, of distortion, and the rebirth of divine union. If he's in his silence, know this: our divine masculine is not ignoring us. He's becoming worthy of us. If he's pushing us away, know this: he's not punishing us. He's detaching from the self that betrayed you. If he's really detaching from the self that betrayed us in that regard. And if he's grieving, know this: he's not broken, he's being purified. And if he returns, receive him with the eyes of the soul, not with the pain of the past, not with the discernment of the present either. Not with what I mean is, not with the pain of the past, but rather with more discernment. What I meant is to have more discernment of the present, because now our divine masculine has nothing left to hide behind. And this is what it means to be witness in sacred love. Not when everything is perfect, but when everything has been stripped away and only truth remains. So if you are holding space for your divine masculine as he breaks, integrates, or returns, I want you to know that you are doing a good job. So if you guys want to work one-on-one with me, you can book the first time Twin Flame Psychic Guidance session. This is a one-on-one session. You can ask me all the questions you want. It's conducted via Zoom. So I can help you understand what's exactly happening in your connection. and how to stabilize the field as your divine masculine transforms. So you can find the link to book the session in the description below. Until then, remember, the moment our divine masculine's ego breaks, it's not the end, it's the initiation. And that man that emerges from the ashes is the one our soul has always known. Stay anchored, stay sovereign, and stay in the knowing. That love is the truest form, will always find its way back through truth. And with that, I hope you have enjoyed this discourse. And if you guys want to work one-on-one with me, you can book for a session. I've also introduced a couple of newer healing and activations, so do check out my website. All right, with that, I'll see you all again soon. Take care and have a good one.